The reason to why I have brought you to this church here today in Nuremberg is because it represents something quite interesting within the church itself. Now, this is an evangelical Christian Protestant church, and I just went in there to film something very interesting that technically, theologically speaking, shouldn't actually be in the church, but is still in the church. Now, this thing that's in there is a painting, and it is a painting of Mary. You may be thinking, well, why would you be showing us a painting of Mary? Why is it so important and relevant to this church, and why is it such a problematic issue? Well, the reason why it's an issue is because being an evangelical church, it technically shouldn't actually be in there, because this painting is a painting of the Assumption of Mary, which is a dogma which was introduced into the Catholic Church by Pope Pius XII around about the 1960s, when he was the Pope at the time. And the reason why it shouldn't be in this church is because evangelicals of the Protestant kind don't actually accept this dogma. They don't actually accept this doctrine of the Catholic tradition. So when I first came across this church, when I was visiting Nuremberg a year ago in Deutschland, I was quite surprised, because being the individual that I am, trying to understand deeper my faith and my Christian beliefs, and of course questioning the Assumption of Mary and things like this, and whether or not it actually happened, I was very curious and very surprised to find it actually here, in a church that technically rejects the doctrine. And this brings about an interesting question that we should ask ourselves, which is the question of myth. And the reason why something like the Assumption of Mary is interesting, because it brings about the question of who actually is Mary. The Assumption of Mary as a dogma is the idea that the Virgin Mary ascended into heaven by body and soul and spirit. And this idea, fundamentally, literally, on most levels, is not actually present in the Bible. It's not present within Scripture when we look for it. So why is it in a Protestant church? They reject the dogma, but it's still there. Now, maybe before the Reformation, this church was a Catholic church and simply the painting hasn't been removed. Or maybe they have left it there for the sake of history. We're not really too sure. So the Assumption of Mary as an idea was actually brought about into the Catholic Church, not as a possibility, not as a theory, but actually a dogma, something of infallibility. So Pope Pius XII, he brought in the dogma of the Ascension of Mary as something in which is infallible. Now, when we're talking about infallibility, we're talking about the idea that something cannot be false. It is 100% true. Now, for an idea that has no true, literal, biblical context or explanation or primary source evidence, it is quite surprising that it was brought into the Catholic Church as something that is infallible. Because we're literally talking about something that there is actually no evidence for. There is no evidence for the Assumption of Mary. Yet, with this church, even if it's an evangelical church, the painting is still there. And the reason why I'm talking about this fundamentally is because it brings us into the topic of the mythologization of religion and the fundamental problem of that. So, if religion in general is not grounded in their scriptures as the most important thing that needs to be understood, we do fall into this problem of mythologizing religion. And when we do this, this leads religion into becoming something of a myth, of a legend. And we start incorporating legends and myths that potentially are absolutely not true into the religion itself. The Assumption of Mary being a good example here, because there's no primary evidence for it. Now, this isn't just within Christianity, this is within religion as a whole. We see this in every kind of religion. We see this within Islam, when it comes to hadith literature, which is secondary and not primary Islamic scripture, which is that of the Quran. And of course, we have it with Catholicism when it comes to incorporating the idea of infallibility, that the Pope can proclaim something to be infallible, to be unquestionably true, even when there's no evidence for the thing itself, or no evidence for the thing to actually occur itself. So this is quite interesting. And this is why I wanted to make this video. Because if we mythologize religion, we're going to move away from the truth. And for me, being a Christian, the reason why I have faith, the reason why I want to believe in something, is because I'm aiming towards understanding the truth. If the truth is led astray by myth, by things that are not validated to be of fundamental truth, or with evidence, we fall into mythologization, and the mythologization of religion itself. And this eventually will lead us astray from the true message of whether it be Christianity or Islam or whatever it may be. We fall away and fall astray to the true message that the scriptures are actually presenting to us. You know, obviously we have Protestants claiming oftentimes that Catholicism leads more to the, in some sort of sense, idol worship of saints, of Mary, in which the Catholics would call a form of veneration, not worship, of course, because they have their own defense for it. But fundamentally, what we see is, from the Protestant side, it is a valid criticism. Why are we incorporating things to be unquestionably true with regards to ideas that are not actually validated by the Bible or proven within the Bible? Like, for example, we know from biblical texts and the consistency of Scripture that Jesus Christ was crucified, that he was raised on the third day, resurrected, then was assumed into heaven, and that Jesus Christ fulfills the messianic prophecies. This is something that is very consistent within the Christian narrative. And this is why most Christians claim those to be true. So when we actually start to think of it from this perspective, regarding that the Assumption of Mary is a infallible dogma within the church, within the Catholic Church, that it isn't actually evidenced with primary texts in the Bible, but it is given infallibility by Pope Pius XII, could we not claim that doing so is a heresy? I mean, is this not a heretical claim, to claim something to be absolutely unquestionably true for something that has no direct evidence? I mean, if the roles were reversed, let's say the Protestants said this, let's say the Protestants or maybe some other denominational group of Christianity said this, and they said, we're going to enforce this idea and we're going to say it's unquestionably true. If they did that, they would be regarded as heretics, because the Catholic Church does the same thing with regards to Christology when it comes to other Christian groups, and it does the same thing regarding maybe doctrinal changes or different perspectives with regards to the narrative of Jesus Christ, his nature, and things like this. So if we want to look at it from that perspective, it's quite interesting. It's an interesting question to ask with regarding the power structures of authority within the church, within Christianity. Did the Catholic Church commit a heresy when it comes to Mary? So if you found this video interesting, guys, put your comments down below, because this is an interesting query that I have regarding things to do with denominationalism, Christianity, the Catholic Church. How would a Catholic look at this? mean, there'd be a lot of Catholics that would probably say, the reason why I'm a Catholic is because I find it valuable to allow myself to let go into the tradition and be humble completely. But does doing that not sacrifice some form of discernment from your rational mind when it comes to things like this that I've just described? Because to some extent, we could say that that is being ignorant to some extent. Why would we dogmatize things that we have no evidence for, that no apostle claimed to have come about, that Jesus Christ never claimed to have said? Why would we dogmatize ideas so that tradition overcomes scripture? And in my view, because of this type of thing happening, I believe, and I think it's very much true, that tradition is corruptible, which is why I don't put my faith in tradition. Fundamentally, I put my faith into biblical Christianity, biblical scripture, because I believe that it is more reliable than the traditions of man. Because man, if he can create a tradition, that tradition can become corruptible. So if you enjoyed this video, guys, make sure to give it a like. If you want to maybe ask some questions or maybe have your own thoughts regarding this type of topic, put them in the comments down below. I'll be very interested to see what they are. And until the next time, I'll speak to you very soon.